Hello, hi, how's it going? My name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know who you are, you have found yourself at Drag and Spirituality, Gender Diverse. This is number eight of our 12 week series. Our guest this evening is Kai, and we will introduce him in just a moment. I just want to take a moment to also um, thank the Dragon Spirituality Summit. The Dragon Spirituality Summit is a summit, the first of its kind, to bring together artists who do drag and are spiritual and like hang out. So there's going to be panels and keynote speakers, and we're going to have two drag night performances in some churches, as well as a family-friendly event in a local LGBTQ center in Chicago. Go to dragonspirituality.com to register. Um, and uh, and we also do have like maybe a couple of performance slots still available. It is a paid gig, so if you're interested, and we'll be in Chicago, October 7th through the 9th, go ahead and hit us up. I also want to give a shout out and a thank you to my Patreon members who support me and this work at Queer Chaplain. That's Patreon for folks who might not know. It's a way that you can contribute on a monthly basis to support the work of a queer chaplain, which are a number of podcasts and some other kinds of workshops and those sorts of things. So the queer chaplain really tries to make everything accessible and free. So in doing that, it just makes things challenge to I guess, to produce things. So if you're interested in supporting us, click the link in the description to the Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of the stuff on the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest also. Um, please do engage with us, ask questions, make comments, and we'll engage with you as best as we can. Whether you're joining us live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, or if you're listening to us on a podcast after the fact, you can always feel free to find the links in the description and send a direct message to myself, or there will also be the links to our guest as well. So without further ado, I would like to invite Kai to the stage.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It feels so good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. It's been one of those evenings with all kinds of technical stuff.
Oh boy, was it.
Yeah, so I appreciate your tenaciousness with moving forward and making this happen. Looks like we do have a comment I want to try to address. Looks like Veronica Electronica says howdy from Nashville. Veronica will be joining us, I think, next week. Check out the link in the description. It'll tell you specifically. Glad you could join
Well,
us,
howdy,
Veronica.
Veronica. Appreciate you popping on
Yeah.
and saying hi.
For sure. And can you tell the folks a little bit about you, like where you're at? And
Oh yeah, sure thing. So, hi everybody, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I am Kai the Drag King. I identify as a gender fluid. I gotta get all of them right. Gender fluid, demisexual, panromantic. I currently reside in Denair, California. So a lot of people probably don't know where that is. It's a very small town in north central California. I'm right in the middle of agriculture, almond orchards to be specific, and I've I'm consider myself a baby drag king. I've been performing since February of this year, so at the end of this month, it would be 7 months doing drag for me.
oh, awesome. Okay, so being in your first year makes you a little one, huh? A
Yeah.
baby still? Yes. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for introducing yourself a little bit more. I always like to start off this conversation with asking a little bit about my guest's childhood, whatever it is you feel comfortable, but will you share with me maybe a little bit about your spiritual experience as a young person?
Yes, of course. I'd be happy to. So I'm not originally from this area that I live in now. I'm originally from Murphy's, California, which is a even smaller town up in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I have one sibling. I have a younger sister, and I grew up with my mom and dad. We were a very spiritual household. I grew up going to church every Sunday. To preface this, my family is of the Christian religion. As far as a specific sect, I'm not exactly sure what they are.
Mm-hmm.
My family was very much involved with the church when I was younger. My sister and I were in the youth group. I'm trying to think of the Awana. It's like Cub Scouts,
Mm-hmm.
but for church. We did participate heavily in that for a couple years. My grandmother sang in the choir. So my one of the pillars of my childhood was definitely, growing up with spirituality.
Mm-hmm. And did you enjoy that? Was that something you really like, got life from and got fed from?
Yeah, I mean, our family was very much busy, very active. My sister and I both did sports, all different kinds of sports. We were heavily involved in 4-H. So we didn't have a lot of socialization like outside of those. So going to church every Sunday, like, it helped us to, interact with people, and I'm trying to think of what else. Just be members and in touch with our community, especially with it being a
Mm-hmm.
small town.
Right, right. And are you still connected with that community or a similar community now? And if not, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure thing. So currently I am not a practicing Christian, but I do consider myself spiritual. I believe in having good morals and having a good code of ethics just for the betterment of, fellow man. Um, I am fascinated by other religions as well, not just Christianity. Part of who I am as a person is doing research just to learn more for knowledge's sake. So I have read into, what's the basis of Judaism, Norse paganism, things like that. So what really drives me is more the curiosity, the why and the
Hmm.
how behind that.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate to that myself. I had somebody ask me recently, they're like, they saw just the work I do and they're like, "So are you Christian?" I was like, "I wouldn't say that." I said, I feel like my religion is, or my spirituality is queer, and or maybe just like seeking. Um, how how was that like, I guess what took you away from the church? Was it just because you moved, or did you feel like it just wasn't in alignment with you, or?
So there was a couple of factors over the years that led to me drifting from the church. The biggest thing was time. I my activities as a kid transitioned from middle school into high school. So I was going to school, taking advanced classes. So my coursework was pretty hefty. I still remained involved with sports uh, throughout my middle school and high school years, and I became very involved with FFA, Future Farmers in America. So the only day I had a day off basically was Sunday. And
Okay.
on those days was, I had to get my homework done, I had to take care of my animals. So, having balancing out time to take care of that became an issue. The other thing was when I graduated from high school and moved away, I kind of had that disconnect from my home church, moving away
Hmm.
and being on your own. You you go out into the world and you're like, okay, now I'm away from my community. I kind of have to figure things out for myself. Um,
Hmm.
I did my first semester of college, I did move in. I lived with a family. I didn't get an apartment on my own, and they were a religious family. They went to church every Sunday. So I did go to quite a few services with them. But as I, progressed through my college years, I just saw myself going less and less. And I think part of that is I went to, growing up, I attended this church for 18 years of my life. So trying to find another church to kind of serve as a replacement was a bit difficult for me because I didn't have that established, friends and family base that I had back at home.
Right. It's awesome. So it really just has come to just just you haven't not finding that community where you're at now.
I mean, I'm still a spiritual person, but I don't think, no offense to the Christian church, I just don't think that's the right place for me at this point in my life. Will I circle back to it at some point, down the road? Who knows? We don't really know what the future holds for us.
Right, right. So just to kind of jump into the drag part of things, when was the first time you saw drag and what was your impression?
Okay. So my first time seeing drag was Pride Month. I think it was towards the end of the month of 2020. My then friend, now partner, invited me to a drag show, and I was an ally at that point. So I'm like, oh, okay, this seems like really cool. And just seeing that show for the first time just opened my eyes to the possibility of combining, being queer, your individual, spin on art, the lip syncing, the choreography, the costumes, just mashed up into this amazing ball of performing. And it definitely opened my eyes into, what I do today. Obviously, I was inspired by it because now I'm a
Right,
drag
right.
queen.
So it was kind of love at first sight. My and then I just wanted to clarify. So it sounded like when you first saw drag, were you not a part of the LGBTQ plus community? Is that what you were saying? You were an ally?
Yes, that's correct.
And then how did drag play a role in that changing for you?
Yes. So it started off, I went to that one show, and then it had been a while since I went to my next one. But the more I started hanging out with my partner and going to these shows, the more drag really opened my eyes to, these different people and how they all presented differently. Some are cis, some are transgender, some are drag queens, some are drag kings, some are drag in betweens. And it really kind of, being in that community that was so accepting, kind of, a light bulb went off on my head, like, huh, like, I know I'm a really strong ally, but I think I might be queer. So that was definitely the start of my queer journey.
Yeah, yeah. And can you talk, this is a gender diverse series. So can you talk with me a little bit about how you understand your gender today, outside of drag?
Yes, of course. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, I do identify as gender fluid. So for me, it means that I either identify as more female, more male, or sometimes non-binary. It really depends on how I'm feeling that day. That's what I love about identifying as gender fluid, because I can change who I want to be and how I choose to present myself however long I want. I can
Hmm.
go for, a whole month as, identifying as male, and then all of a sudden change my mind. It's like, you know what? I feel like presenting as female or non-binary today. So,
Cool.
I was battling back and forth for the longest time trying to determine, well, am I gender fluid or am I non-binary? And there are key differences between the two, but after doing some meditating and self-reflection, I came to realize I think gender fluid is more what I'm trying to think of, more how I want to choose to identify.
Right. It kind of seems to land and fit you best.
Yeah, exactly.
And Can you talk with me about the gender that your gender expression in drag as well?
Yes. So, with being gender fluid, I mostly present masculine in drag, but I'm not afraid to play around with various bits of femininity. I
Mhm,
love wearing women's boots. I love sparkles. I mean, I'm wearing my sparkly bow tie right now.
mhm,
So what I like about drag is there's no wrong way to do it, essentially. Especially as of late, there's no rules. You can play
mhm.
with your persona and your costuming however you want. And I
Right,
just
right.
love having the freedom to, choose my persona, for each performance.
Mhm. And so what I'm hearing though is though your drag isn't say gender fluid because you do identify as a drag king, correct? But your
Yes, that's
kingness
correct.
doesn't does include some flamboyancy or some femininity within that understanding of kinghood, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome, awesome. Someone on Facebook is saying, thanks for sharing, Kai. I appreciate hearing your story and how you exist in the world.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've dove in and we've covered a lot of bases, as far as like around drag and spirituality. Um, what do you feel is your so what's your sexuality? You don't want to talk about that. I know you
Yeah, of
mentioned it
course.
in your bio, but could you explain that a little bit more to folks?
Yeah, of course. I love the chance to, explain my lifestyle or my own unique perspective on it, and then being able to educate people who might have questions. So I identify as demisexual panromantic. So demisexual falls under the ace umbrella. Basically,
And
the
ace is
spark.
ace is
Yes,
asexual, right?
ace
Okay.
is asexual. Um, Basically, the Spark Notes version is in order for me to have a physical relationship with them, I have to have a strong emotional connection with them first. That's how I see. That's how I choose to interpret it under the label, which I choose to label myself. And then panromantic, pan meaning it doesn't matter what your gender expression or how you choose to identify. I choose to be intimate and love someone based on what's in here, who they are as a person.
Mhm. Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that. I know sometimes I've been in situations, especially like say with folks who maybe aren't part of the LGBTQ community, and sometimes explaining the differences or even just explaining like this is what demisexual is or this is what asexual is or bisexual or even gender fluid. It can be so individual because I mean I've understood that. I mean there are plenty of people probably look at me and say the way I live my life I should have these identifiers and I might not see myself that way, as well as there are other people who are part of our community that it's kind of the same way. And
Yeah.
what was the process of coming to that understanding for yourself?
I feel like the indicators were always there. I just didn't realize it at the time. Like I mentioned
Mhm,
before, I grew up in a very rural part of California. Unfortunately, I wasn't exposed, to the queer community growing up. So when I was going through my whole, identity journey, looking back now, it's like, oh yeah, I was definitely like queer, as a
mhm,
kid and growing up. I just didn't know, what the word for it or like how to explain those feelings were.
mhm.
Um, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, no, no, that was a good answer. I mean, I think some of the things around that is that, what was I gonna say? Oh, and one of the things just to clarify that what I'm hearing too, it's not that like queer people made you queer. It was like for me, what my experience was is that I often felt like I didn't fit in with the people around me. I wasn't really sure how or what, but I just didn't feel like I just felt different. And because like you, I grew up in a small town too. It was like I had no imagination and I didn't know what the possibility was and how I could exist. And it took me seeing other people living differently than I had seen before to really kind of come to a place to kind of allow myself that same freedom to really figure out what is it, who is it that I am? And I think for me, it was more of like finding an identifier to match who I was, not me lining up with an identifier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you completely nailed that on the head. I mean, I definitely went through like a whole roller coaster of, what am I and who am I throughout my journey. Because, like I mentioned before, started going to the, drag shows and being in the queer community. It's like, I don't think I'm straight. And then that went to, oh, I think I'm bisexual, to, oh, just kidding, I think I'm pansexual. And then, even though they're not entirely related, then landing on, oh, I don't think I'm cis, I think I'm gender fluid.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the those parts of me were there. It was just, fine being in the queer community and, finally growing into the person that I would be proud of, as a kid looking at
Mm-hmm.
me as an adult now.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like, I guess I was kind of thinking of a light bright, and maybe that's not quite the way, but I just feel like it's not that like, it's like we had these lights or these parts in ourself that were there, but I don't feel like they were lit up or they, like, I didn't know how to really connect with them or hold them or express them.
Exactly.
What
Because,
do you, go ahead.
oh, like when I was a kid, I knew I was different. Like, it's just frustrating when you're not surrounded by the right group of people to be able to explore that kind of yourself and like metamorphosize into the person you want to be. So you
Mhm.
just deal with it the best you can and try to navigate your just navigating your feelings when you're going through puberty and going into teenagehood is rough enough, but trying to do that and having an identity crisis, who am I? It's extra rough.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, those things are difficult anyway, right?
Yeah.
And it can be so challenging, I think our especially like our teen years or our preteen years, those are very formative times. And I think oftentimes when we don't get to express, like I feel like that's a time that it can be more playful in kind of the exploration. At least it doesn't feel as like maybe there's as much risk maybe? You know how like let's like once you're an adult, then it's just like all those little like explorations, if you will. It's like you're doing it as adult instead of like some child that's kind of like, playing around trying to figure it out. It's harder to do, I think, as an adult
Yeah,
in
I
some
would have
ways.
to agree with you definitely on that.
Yes, and I want to invite folks. So we have a good number of folks who are watching the show tonight. So don't be shy. Put those questions in the comments, whether it's a more clarifying question or if you have a different sort of question. Don't hesitate to ask the questions as well. So it sounds like that was quite a process, and you said drag kind of was a part of that. Um, correct?
Yes, that is very much
Okay.
correct.
That was my understanding. And how did drag, I guess part of, can you talk a little bit about maybe how drag informed your understanding of your gender now?
So, ooh, that's a really interesting question. Um, because of being gender fluid, you can drag allows me to express because I am AFAB, it allows me to express my more masculine side in an obvious display.
Hmm.
And throughout my drag performances, I don't really have a niche type of performance. I like to consider myself a more of a chameleon king that does it all. So I'll do the campy routines. I'll do the more, sexy routines. I'll do different genres too. I've done like hip hop and country and metal. And I love having drag as an outlet to kind of be able to play with um, different ideas of gender that have been stereotypically assigned to those who are AMAB.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah, and
just fun being able to explore that and
right,
experience it.
and sorry, do you mind telling folks what AFAB and AMAB means?
Oh, of course. I apologize because I just assume that everyone knows
That's
what the,
okay.
queer lingo is. Yes. So AFAB it's an acronym. It stands for assigned female at birth. So I identify as AFAB, and then AMAB is the opposite. It's assigned male at birth.
Awesome, great. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that there's been a lot of opportunities for us to maybe like expand people's understanding. I think oftentimes, too, I think being in the LGBTQ QI plus community too, and like sometimes we don't understand or know. I know there's plenty of folks where I've used AFAB and they're like, "Girl, what's that mean?" You know. So I think it's always great to be able to kind of like I don't know, like explain things out a little bit more, especially in mixed company.
Yes, of course. And I'd rather do it in a controlled environment where the right information is being given versus,
Hmm.
um, people who spread stereotypes and misinformation.
Hmm. You talked a little bit about earlier when you were kind of on your gender journey about meditation and those sorts of things. Is that part of your spiritual practice now, or what would you say are some practices that you do that are spiritual, part of your spiritual self expression?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So meditation is definitely one of my biggest cornerstones. I do have so fun fact about me, I have ADHD and I'm also on the autism spectrum. So the way my brain works, it would be considered abnormal. So I have a lot of different, thoughts and emotions racing through my head. So I really love using meditation as a physical tool, an emotional tool, and a spiritual tool to kind of ground myself, become one with the universe, really, look inward and outward. How can I better myself? How can I better, the people in my community? My other spiritual practice is volunteering.
Hmm.
I'm one of those people that if you need help with anything at all, I will be there at the drop of the hat, willing to help you out with anything. I'm trying to think of what else. I know a previous performer mentioned food. That is a
Hmm.
huge part of my spiritual uh, repertoire as well. And it's interesting how I can see a pattern in myself. When I'm eating, not that great, eating fast food more often, I can kind of feel myself being more blah. But if I pay attention to what I eat and, choose more healthier options, I feel like it's more beneficial to myself, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. It's interesting how all these things you wouldn't think are connected, but they actually are.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's so powerful too because it sounds like you could do like it seems like there's all these separate things, and I think sometimes it can be overwhelming. It's like I need to do something for my body, and I need to do something for my spirit. I need to do something for my mental, and all that sort of stuff. But like you talked about, you're like, oh, if I eat well, that's actually going to impact my body, and it's going to impact my mental health and my spiritual health. I think oftentimes one of the great things about these is that you can like you can just focus on one area and the other parts of self are also impacted. There is a question here. So Ann Dearson said, not allowed to explore gender or sexual orientation as a kid in the 60s and 70s. I've never done drag. I didn't feel comfortable exploring my gender until after my parents passed away. My late husband, who let me explore my gender identity, gave me the unspoken permission to get where I am today. I didn't transition and settle myself being transgender female non-binary AMAB until I was 53. I'm now 58.
Wow.
Wow. Thanks. Yeah, like
thank you so much for sharing. That is huge. I think
yeah.
with people in the queer community today, specifically people who are more my age group, I'm 27 by the way, kind of take for granted that we're not 100% safe sometimes, but we have more freedom to, be able to express ourselves this way versus people, our queer elders who have come before who've had to, suffer in silence.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks so much, Anne. Welcome to the LGBTQ plus community. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how, I've identities can be so liberating and can really help, I think, help us navigate in the world, but oftentimes some of our identities can also keep us like stuck. I know for me, it took me, I didn't really start living until my trans identity until I was 40, and so there were a lot of other boxes and identities that I resided in that kept me from getting to where I am today. Like there were like because I thought I was a gay or identified as a gay man at some point in time, I had I don't know, it's just I just noticed how like sometimes these identities you pick them or you select them or you use them and then it kind of helps in some ways it kind of tells you, it informs you on how you're going to live your life or how you're not going to live your life and kind of even the people who are going to be around you as well.
Yeah.
Have you had it have you ever had that experience with identity?
Um, I would say yes and no. That's probably the reason why I don't like to put myself in a box, but sometimes it's necessary to kind of help those around you, with identifying who
Mhm.
you are as an individual. I think that's part of the reason why I landed on gender fluid, because I am very much in touch with my masculine and non binary side, but I didn't quite want to give up my feminine side at the same time. Typically, when I dress out of drag, I choose more masculine clothing items. But then there's times where I look at myself in the mirror, it's like I'm still a woman sometimes. So
Mm.
I feel like it's kind of a hindrance sometimes for myself because I kind of, it's like I hurt myself in the confusion because there are so
Mm.
many options for me to choose. I also think it can be difficult as far as when people in the non-LGBT community see me and identify me. So my
Right.
main pronouns out of drag are they, she, he. So I am pretty flexible with still being labeled as she. I just prefer they. It's
Mhm.
when people label me with um titles like ma'am. I hate being addressed as ma'am out in public. There's just something in my head that goes, I don't like that. And
Mhm.
it's because they don't know that I identify as gender fluid. They just look at me and just, because of my physical structure, they just look at me and say, oh, woman.
Right, right. Yeah, what was I gonna I was gonna say something to that. Well, I mean, I think you kind of spoke to it well when you talked about your experience as a drag king, that just because you have a drag king label, if you will, or just because we have these labels, doesn't necessarily inform everything about us, that we actually can be a king and have feminine qualities. We can be even a cis man and have feminine qualities. I know it sometimes it can feel those structures can feel very restrictive at times. And the reality of it is that, we can exist in so many different forms.
Yeah, it's not one thing or another. It's more of a spectrum, really.
Yeah, indeed. Um, do you have any questions or anything to add? Like, is anything coming to mind to talk about at the moment? Just want to check in
Yes.
with you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate that. There was, because I went back and read my application that I originally submitted, like if there's anything you want to touch on. Um, I'm I'm not sure if concerned is the right word I want to use, but I am intrigued and want to figure out why there's such a huge ratio of drag queens to drag kings.
Hmm.
So the biggest example that I can go off of that happened to me personally, my partner and I went to RuPaul's Drag Con in LA this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And a huge event. It was held at the LA Expo. We were there all weekend, and the entire 3 days we were there, we only saw 5 kings.
Mm-hmm.
5 out of the,
Oh, wow.
hundreds, if not thousands of people that were there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you have a
um,
sense of what that's about?
I'm not sure if it has to do with, like, historically drag queens have been more popular. I mean, um, I honestly don't. Maybe it's because certain people are intimidated by the art form. They think, oh, I could never do something like that. Maybe it's because of the popularity, because there is a huge performance difference between,
Hmm.
when you look at a drag queen that goes and does their routine versus a drag king. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think there can be some very vast differences. Yeah, I'm not sure what the why is, but it's definitely something that I've experienced where it's like you can you can throw a stone and hit a drag queen. You might have to throw 5 or 6 to hit a king. Not to say we're throwing stones at
yeah.
drag artists. That's kind of what came to mind at that point.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to preface this by saying, my personal view, I think all drag is valid. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter who you are, you know, everyone's drag persona and like how they decide to brand themselves as a drag artist is completely up to you, and everyone can do it, and everyone has their own style. You don't have to, copy, you know, someone else's look and routine completely. You have freedom to do your own thing.
Hmm. Can you share with us maybe a time that you had experienced both both spirituality and drag at the same time?
Yes, I can actually. So this past Pride Month, I did a specific routine for one of my venues. So I performed the song Holy Water by Noah Davis. If no one has heard
Hmm.
that song, please go to YouTube, Pandora, Spotify, and listen to it. It's an amazing song. Noah Davis is a very talented trans music artist. And for me, performing that song was kind of a nod to my spiritual upbringing. I didn't necessarily have a negative spiritual upbringing because I didn't know I was queer or had any like indication at that point. Um, but I just think the song is just very powerful based on the lyrics alone. The lyrics are almost like poetry.
Hmm.
So just
Yeah.
being able to perform that was really the first time that I made that connection between, my spiritual self and my drag persona.
Hmm. Yeah, and like for folks who might not be aware of it, there's one line I think that's really powerful that is like, "I don't need your holy water," which I think is very common. I think you probably get it. I get it a lot. Like just being in the public eye, there are plenty of people who claim religion who decide to tell us we're going to hell or we need to repent or what we're doing is like, all these sorts of things. And I think, yeah, I think Noah's song is a great way of saying, you know what? I'm fine. Like, don't worry about me. Like, I'm good,
Yeah.
and I don't I don't need your holy water. And it doesn't have to be that, because I think religion and spirituality is so diverse and can be expressed differently, even within their own, I guess, sex, if you will, very much like our gender identities or our sexual identities, that just because we identify as Christian doesn't necessarily tell you that doesn't really tell you that might not really tell you all that much,
Yeah.
There's more conversation that probably needs to be had to really find out what does being a Christian what does being a Muslim or what does a Buddhist mean to you, and how does it inform how you live your life?
Yeah. Those are both, all those questions are huge topics. And I wish, everyone can just have a big ol' sit down and just express their feelings as adults,
Hmm.
in a nice, neutral manner, like no yelling, no screaming involved, just everyone talking together and expressing their feelings in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah. I've one of my biggest supporters in my life is somebody whose religion and a lot of the labels that they identify with, I would just automatically assume does not jive with me. And they might see the world very differently than me, but they show up for me. And if I just said, oh, they're conservative Christian or they're this or that, and I mean, for many years, I just stayed away because I just assumed that uh, she would want nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? But actually being able to have a conversation with her, I was able to at least come to more of an understanding. I don't think I can fully understand, just like she can't fully understand me, but
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I
conversations are so important.
Yeah, I've been completely where you're at. The first time, someone says, "Oh, I'm Christian," I do have that bias that I shouldn't have. That the first thing that pops in my head, like, "Oh, they're gonna hate me because of who I am," not realizing that there are people out there who identify with the Christian faith who are allies. It's
Hmm.
just there's. I'm not sure if bigotry is the right word, but there's stereotypical thinking on both sides.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for sure. We are down to our last couple of minutes. And we're about 45, almost at 45 minutes. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we go?
Yeah, of course. I just want to thank you so much, Bonnie, for inviting me onto your podcast. I've had a lot of fun discussing all these topics about spirituality and being in the queer community. Um, I am on various social media platforms. If anyone wants to book me for a show, I am most active on Instagram, but you can also find me on TikTok and Twitter as well. All of my handles are at Kai the Drag King. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun discussing all these topics with you today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And for folks who might just be listening, Kai is Kai, the drag king. You also can just take a look in the description, and you can find direct links to um, their his socials, their socials as well.
Yeah.
It could be so interesting too, like when yeah, it's like drag persona, add a drag persona, all those sorts of things. Thanks so much to you, Kai, and thanks so much to everyone who joined us this evening. Thank you for engaging with questions and comments. Anne and Veronica, Hannah Mitchell Art is saying thank you. Is it going
Aw,
to show
thank
it?
you, Hannah.
Oh, there it goes. Hannah says thank you. And so we're glad that you could join us too, Hannah. Join me next week, same time, same place. So Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch at this time, wherever you are. Like all of the participants are in 4 different time zones. So that can be a little bit wild. I'll just say it's 5 or 6:20 Pacific Standard Time. So do the math wherever you are to find out. I think my guest next week is Veronica Electronica from Nashville, who spoke with us earlier. I hope I'm not misspeaking. I swear I get on these lives and my brain goes.
Oh no, same.
But anywho, same, right? Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Kai, and have a great evening. Bye bye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.